This conference will now be recorded.
All right, as always, everything we're going to be talking about is for educational purposes only, and nothing is intended as any type of investment advice. Now, what a morning. So, this is one of those days, and I know we were talking about this before, but this is literally, it's one of those days where if you click buy today at some point, you're more than likely you're going to make some type of money. And obviously, these type of days don't happen every single day. It kind of, unfortunately, for a lot of retail traders, gives a little bit of a false hope of how easy the market is, which we all know is not the case at all. But first of all, I mean, look at BYND. I mean, to look over here and look at the range, $39.43. So we've almost moved $40 towards that upside. So one thing that we have to look at, I mean, this trade was not very hard at all. We know we had at that 152 level, we had some really good buying that came into there. So we knew it needed to pull back from there. We ended up kind of pushing up as the market came in. We pulled back. And then not only that, but remember, is 150 an easy level to break? And when I say break, I mean, obviously if our trend is towards that downside, okay, is it easy to hold underneath? And then obviously if our trend was to the upside, to hold up above. And the answer is absolutely not. And that's on both sides of things. So that means that right now for this thing to be able to stay up above that 150 level is not going to be an easy task. Now we know at that 169 level that we had a whole bunch of selling that came back in a little bit before. And then we could see that we continue to see that selling 167.50, 166, 165, and so on and so forth. So overall, I mean, it was just such a beautiful trigger, that huge move down. So we needed to pull back from 152. I would say that 146.75 is plenty. So our low sitting at, our low sitting there at that 147 level, but coming down to 147 and then just beautiful trigger towards that upside. Now, at any point would we know it was going to move 40 bucks? No, we knew it was going to have a huge range, and the reason we knew that is because if we look at the actual pre-market itself, we can see that the range was already gigantic, and not for nothing, but we know this thing can move, and it just continued to keep going. Now, does that mean you were going to have your entire amount of shares to push up towards that high point? No, and if you did, that means you really don't know how to trade. And it's just a lucky day. But overall, to have something, remember, our runners, we leave runners for a reason, and the reason is for when a stock like this ends up moving $40, we're able to catch a piece of that entire move, and that's exactly what happened. So overall, right now, we can see there's just a whole bunch of selling that's coming back into this. I would not be surprised. Remember that selling that we had at 150. We do have a dominant market maker that made a real big sell position that came in at that 150. So overall, if we continue to see this selling, I'm not going to be shocked to see this thing come right back underneath that 150 level. So we're going to obviously keep this on our list for the afternoon. The next one, PRVB. So not only did we have one stock that had a gigantic range, but we had another one. And now PRVB, $13 move. Were we going to be able to see that in the pre-market? No, not even close. Okay, but overall, we were able to see it had all the variables that we needed. We had the volume that was pushing back in. We had it holding, and that's just the biggest thing right there, is that these cheaper stocks, when we watch them hold in a consolidation, most of the time it's because it's going through an acquisition period. And that's why we want to see that hold, because if we get that kiss of death that brings it underneath, most of the time we don't get to see them come back from it. But what happened is with this stock, it just continued to go back up. What was the highest percent trigger in PRVB? You tell me. It's very simple. When we look at the chart right here, what was the highest percent trigger? Because the obvious answer would be right here, where we have the biggest price action that came back in, but that's not actually the real highest percentage trade, because unfortunately, in order to really get that high percentage, it's always going to be higher above the consolidation. So when we see this big volume bar that came in right about here, and we have that price action coming up, once it broke up above that consolidation on that huge buying. It was going to be above. Now, can you take the take the shot before there? Of course. I mean, there's no reason not to. The only problem that we had with taking it before the consolidation is we really didn't have that much buying towards the highs during the pre-market, which was a big problem around that 13 area. So we didn't really have the print at that 13 until we started to see just a huge amount of buying. And I remember something too, these, stock like PRVB, that these cheaper stocks that just make these huge runs, you have to focus on a little bit different. And if you look at the Traders Exchange, we've went over this, and just off the top of my head, I know in 2 Traders Exchange exactly what you're going to be looking for those cheaper stocks. But the thing is that usually on a cheaper stock, you see a big position come in, and then you see them kind of push the stock up to then unload on people. With PRVB, all we saw was new positions being taken. And remember, with with any stock that's moving a large amount, it's not about, in this case, we know people are going to sell, but it's about, are we getting new buying and new positions coming into the stock? And were the old positions being sold off? And we did not see that at all. We just continued to see buying. Now, the thing about it was that once we got up to 20, it was very, very easy to see that 20 level actually got less prints than most of the levels underneath it to buy. And you saw them push it up because they were looking to unload. On top of the fact, 20, psychological number. 25, we know, is an even better psychological number, but 20, big psychological number. Perfect spot to lead people in thinking it was going to be a support. And then we just started seeing all the positions from down here start selling off towards that upside. So, basically at the end of the day, the trade was over. If we were talking about this in the chat before, most of the buy, after what we saw at 20, the buying that I was seeing coming back underneath, especially with a $5 move, pretty much just considered as covering, not as the stock needing to come back up, not as actual buying, but considered it as people coming back and covering. Now, if we break past this line right here, this 2790, really the 13 level, if we break past the 13 level, then it's completely done. It hasn't really got a kiss of death yet, but it's just not looking good at all. I'm going to keep my eye on it, but there's just not a stock that that I really see much of an opportunity of us being able to do much with. So other than that, we had ONCE that was on our side list, and I was worried about it trading, and that's exactly what happened. You can see that when the first bar, first 5 to 10 minutes don't have a bar above 100,000 shares, I just pretty much stopped watching it, and that's exactly what happened here. There was really not much for us to do with. TLRY, unfortunately, same type of deal. Volume just wasn't there, and even when it gets volume, it's just so hard for it to stay consistent. Which means if the volume is hard to stay consistent, we're gonna have a hard time finding follow through. So didn't really watch that one too much. Now NBY, this is obviously after a halt, and still in a halt right now. Or halts, excuse me, we saw this huge gap down, and that happens very often. I don't really feel comfortable. You can see the volume started dying anyway, and then being in a hole. I mean, it's just very, very, very risky to get into a stock like this when we continue to watch it. Can we tell anything from the prints that moved up in Tesla? So Tesla has a little bit of buying at 215, which is a great sign that it has new buying coming back into it. And really, at the end of the day, the story that I have in Tesla is obviously we need the new buying that came in at 215 for this thing to really, to be able to move. But if you remember correctly, when we first saw the amount of buying that came in under 200, does anyone remember what my price target was? Okay, 205 was our conservative, but what was the actual number that we said in Tesla when we saw that buying coming in under the 200 level? Yeah, 220. 220 was the actual level, and that's just obviously, I don't want to say guess, but of what I saw, 220 was really where I expected those buyers to start making their money. 205 was, once again, our conservative, and we're always going to play things conservative because, we're talking about a stock moving 20-something dollars. You can't go wrong only making 5. So, but at the end of the day, that buying at 215 really shows us that the stock needed to pull back underneath, which it really had. It didn't, and it's really kind of showing that right now. But 220 is where I originally thought, and then buying at 215 definitely kind of gives us a little bit of a confirmation within there. But look at the volume, 10,000 shares a minute. There's just nothing that we're going to be able to do with this, especially sitting in a consolidation like that. The only other thing that I have that I'm kind of interested in watching right now is this WKHS, and if it lets me go back. which I think it might. Yeah. All right, so coming back underneath that 3 level, we have some really nice buying that came in at 295, and unfortunately, okay, so we can see 288 right here. That's another really great burst, but the 295 right here, these big bursts that we see coming in underneath those 3, that's a really ballsy position. So there's not really much going on right now. You can see the volume is pretty pathetic. But overall, there's certainly an opportunity for movement within here. CRM, that's another one that we'll obviously be watching. You can see right now it just pulled underneath its lows, which is I hate trading a stock when it's under its lows like this, especially late in the day, because you get these false breakouts all the time. But this morning we had some huge selling that came into 153 during that pre-market that has not even been close to satisfied yet. On average, trades $3.62. So it certainly needs to come underneath that level. Now we just got a 53,000 share print that came in at 153, but unfortunately below the bid. And even so, 50,000 shares, we're not going to take its color that came back in. But once again, 153, the market makers are working this level very, very, very hard. So when we get a real nice trigger, we should see this thing fall down. I'm gonna say 150, but a lot of times we'll see games that happen before there. But we certainly need to, let's just say, at least $1, 152, in order for them to make their money, which it really should be way more than $1, but $1 being very, very conservative. The other one, Roku had an absolutely phenomenal selling that came into it. And it's pulled up at that 101 level, and it's pulling up above. So on a stock like Roku, now Roku's personality is changing a bit. You can see its average is $3.74, but because it's getting to a higher price, it's a lot higher. I just don't see it holding above 100, especially with that sell-off that we saw coming in at 101. So overall, we're going to continue down. Just make sure that you have continued selling, and then this double bottom right here, 98.50 is a great spot to continue to look, because it's going to start as it gets a little bit closer and gets out of this congestion. It will give it a lot more. It'll start acting like a magnet a lot more. So, well, CRM, the reason I'm saying $1 is just because of the fact right now the volume isn't great, and the way that it's trading isn't great. But 152, it's got to be more than 152 towards the downside. But once again, you can't go wrong, starting off conservatively, and then, obviously, if, as it continues back down, making more money. No one's ever going to be upset when a stock moves $2 when you say $1, but overall, it should be way more than $1. All right, guys, anything else out there that I missed? Anything else going on? Obviously, our market stocks look great. A lot of them are very, for instance, like just looking at Apple, the volume, it looks terrible. Oops. But if you look, just very, very Toy Story 4. But it's a very smooth trading stock this morning. It's really not bad at all. The bars aren't consolidated much. But we'll continue to watch our everyday stocks. Unfortunately, if you look at the volume should end today, a little bit higher than average, to be honest. But the actual moves up, if you look at the volume that was happening during there, really wasn't too good. So let's keep that in mind as we watch throughout the rest of the week. Yes, it was the mornings like this are just so much fun. At the end of the day, when things aren't hard, I mean, really, if you click buy, like I said, at some point, you probably were going to make money. So just, overall, very fun day. Let's hope it continues into our afternoon. I will talk to everyone in the chat, and happy trading.